Hey folks, welcome back to True Crime Stories, where we cover the most thrilling true crime stories. Before we get going, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for me. Thanks. And now let's get into today's story.
All right, so get ready because we are diving into a case this time that feels like, well, it feels like it came straight out like a Gothic novel or something. We're headed to Mistral Bay.
Okay.
And have you ever heard of it?
I have not.
It's this charming little coastal town.
Okay.
But he has,
Uh-huh.
he's got a bit of a dark side.
All right.
Picture this, right? Rugged cliffs.
Okay.
These charming little inns.
Yeah.
And just this really close-knit community. 1,500 people.
Wow, small.
Yeah, they all live kind of in the shadow of these, like, ancient shipwrecks
Oh, wow.
and all these whispered tales of lost souls.
Kind of spooky.
It's the perfect setting, wouldn't you say, for a mystery?
It really does. Yeah, it's got all those elements that make you want to lean in and find out more
Exactly.
about what's going on.
And at the heart of this whole mystery is Clara Westing.
Okay.
Now, she was a beloved school teacher in Mistral Bay,
Right.
and she died during the town's, annual maritime festival. And the initial reports suggested a tragic accident.
Okay.
Like maybe she fell
Fell from where?
from that iconic shipwreck monument
Oh. Okay.
after, maybe a few too many drinks during the festival.
Right. Makes sense.
But something about the scene just didn't sit right
Oh, really?
with the authorities.
What was it? What didn't feel right?
Well, there were inconsistencies,
Okay.
subtle clues that just hinted at something more.
Like what?
Well, they didn't release a lot of details at first,
Right.
but it was enough to make them want to investigate further.
Okay, so they were suspicious right from the beginning.
It seems that way.
Wow.
And when the autopsy results came back,
Uh-huh.
it became very clear
Yeah.
that her death was no accident.
It wasn't.
Nope. Blunt force trauma to the head.
Okay, so someone did something to her.
It looked like, maybe consistent with a fall,
Right.
but there were also defensive wounds on her arms.
She was fighting back.
It really suggested a struggle.
Oh, wow. That paints a very different picture.
Definitely does.
From a tragic accident to something much more sinister.
Yeah, now we're talking about a potential homicide
Right.
in a town where
Yeah.
everybody knows everybody's business.
Oh, I bet that sent shockwaves through the community.
I'm sure it did.
Yeah.
So let's talk about Clara for a minute.
Go.
She wasn't just a teacher. She was very involved in the community.
Okay.
A real advocate for change.
Like what kind of change? What was she passionate about?
Well, especially when it came to protecting the environment
Okay.
and the town's dwindling fishing industry.
I see.
But her vision for the future of Mistral Bay
Uh-huh.
kind of clashed with, with the town's traditions.
Oh, so she was a bit of a disruptor.
Yeah, you could say that.
Interesting.
She was determined to shake things up,
Hmm.
bring Mistral Bay into the 21st century.
But change can be hard,
It can't.
especially in a place that's so rooted in tradition.
Ex-
So she was facing some resistance.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Like what kind of resistance?
Well, she'd been receiving threatening messages.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Like warnings to back off her activism.
Yeah, and some were delivered in person,
Oh, that's scary.
and others appeared as these, cryptic notes, almost like something out of one of those ghost stories.
Adding to that spooky atmosphere of the town.
Right. It's like the town's folklore was seeping into reality.
Yeah, I can see that.
So let's talk about some of the people
Okay.
that were in Clara's life.
All right.
The first person that really caught Officer Leo's attention was a guy named Sam Greaves.
Okay.
He was a local fisherman
All right.
with a pretty complicated history with Clara.
Complicated how?
He was a close friend,
Have it?
someone who really understood the traditions of Mistral Bay. But he also had, deeper feelings for her.
Oh, so there was maybe some unrequited love there.
Yeah, and, mix that with the pressure of the declining fishing industry, it's a recipe for,
For trouble.
yeah, maybe.
So was he a suspect?
Well, their last conversation at the festival was
Yeah.
pretty heated.
Oh, really?
Lots of unspoken emotions
Interesting.
and just a sense of growing despair. And then there was Clara's estranged brother, Mason York.
Okay.
Now, he had just returned to town
Uh-huh.
right before her death.
Okay.
The family history is kind of, it's shrouded in secrecy,
Oh.
marked by this shared trauma.
So there's some baggage there.
Definitely.
Interesting.
And their reunion at the festival was
Was a happy one?
far from it.
Oh.
There was some serious tension between them.
I see.
And their last conversation, several witnesses overheard it, described as a bitter argument.
Oh, wow.
Full of accusations and recriminations.
So there's some real animosity there.
Yeah, seems like it.
Okay, so we've got the potential love interest and the estranged brother, both with some, let's say, complicated relationships with Clara.
Exactly. And
then, who else?
there's Ava Fontaine.
Who's that?
She's the town's resident fortune teller.
Oh, wow. Really? Like a psychic?
Yeah, she claims to have this connection to the spirits, and the secrets of Mistral Bay.
So she adds a little bit of the supernatural to this whole thing.
A touch, yeah.
Interesting. And what's her connection to Clara?
Well, she claims to have sensed, quote-unquote, dark energies
Boy.
surrounding Clara in the days leading up to her death.
So she was like a harbinger of doom.
That's one way to put it.
Wow, this is getting more and more intriguing.
Isn't it?
Oh, this.
So we have
Yeah.
3 people,
Yeah,
each with a complex relationship with Clara,
right.
each harboring secrets and potential motives.
And Officer Leo has his work cut out for him.
He does. And as he starts to delve into their past, he discovers that the truth is often buried.
Underneath.
Yeah, underneath layers of deception and self-preservation.
It sounds like he's got a real puzzle on his hands.
He does. And to really understand this case,
Uh-huh.
we need to rewind a little bit. Go back to the Maritime Festival itself.
Right.
Because remember, this wasn't just a night of celebration.
It wasn't.
It was a microcosm of the larger conflicts brewing in Mistral Bay.
Like what?
Well, the tensions between tradition and progress,
Right.
the anxieties over the declining fishing industry, and the whispers of discontent all came to a head amidst the festivities.
I see. So the festival was like a pressure cooker.
It really was.
Wow.
So let's try to picture ourselves there at the festival.
Okay.
All right. The air is thick with the smell of salt water and fried food.
Oh, I can almost smell it.
The sound of sea shanties
Yeah.
and laughter
Mm.
mixed with the cries of gulls overhead.
It's such a vivid scene.
Yeah, the harbor is alive with activity.
I bet.
Boats bobbing in the water,
Yeah.
their lanterns casting those flickering shadows
Yeah.
on the faces of the revelers.
It sounds so festive.
It was, but
Yeah.
beneath the surface of all that merriment,
Yeah.
there was this current of unease.
Almost like a storm brewing on the horizon.
Yeah, you could feel it.
Wow. And Clara's right in the middle of it all.
Oh, yeah, she's a lightning rod for both admiration and resentment.
That's got to be a tough position to be in.
It is. And her conversations with Sam and Mason,
Yeah.
each filled with this unspoken tension,
Right.
they take on a whole new significance
Mm-hmm.
in light of her death.
It's like looking back at a photograph and noticing something you didn't see before.
Exactly. And Ava's there, too.
The fortune teller.
Yeah, with her pronouncements of impending doom.
Adding to that feeling of dread.
Right. Was she genuinely sensing danger, or was she, as some whispered, manipulating events?
Ooh, that's a good question.
One we might never know the answer to.
Yeah.
But as the night goes on,
Mm-hmm.
the festival reaches its peak.
Okay.
Everyone's getting ready for the bonfire on the beach.
All right.
But amidst all the revelry, Clara slips away,
Mm.
unnoticed.
Where'd she go?
She heads towards that isolated shipwreck monument.
The one where her body was found.
The very same.
That's a bit ominous, isn't it?
It is, and it makes you wonder, what drew her there that night? Was she seeking solace, or was she meeting someone?
Someone with less than honorable intentions.
Perhaps.
This is getting good.
It is, and that's where we'll pick up in part 2 of our deep dive.
Can't wait.
So we're back.
Back in Mistral Bay.
Yeah, and remember Claire was last seen headed to that,
To that shipwreck monument.
yeah, that isolated shipwreck monument on the night of the festival.
Right. Right.
It's a beautiful spot,
Yeah.
but also kind of a,
A little creepy.
yeah, perfect for a clandestine meeting or...
Or a crime.
Exactly.
It really adds to the whole mystery.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And it was at the foot of that monument
Mm-hmm.
that they found Clara's body the next morning.
Right.
And at first, everyone
Yeah.
just assumed that she'd fallen.
That makes, it's uneven terrain. Right.
It's dark,
It was late.
festive atmosphere, maybe a little slippery.
Yeah, maybe she'd had too much to drink.
Right, right.
But then,
The autopsy.
yeah, the autopsy revealed a much different story.
A more sinister story, right?
Much more sinister, yeah.
Yeah.
Those defensive wounds on her arms.
Yeah.
They told a story
Of a struggle.
of a struggle.
Someone was fighting back.
It really suggested
Yeah.
a violent confrontation.
Not an accident at all.
Not at all.
So Poor Officer Leo.
Oh, I know.
This is a huge case for him.
Huge. A potential homicide.
In a town that's probably never seen one.
Never. I mean,
Where do you even start with that?
I know, right? Everyone you talk to
Yeah.
is a friend, a neighbor.
Potential suspect?
I mean, that's got to be a lot of pressure.
Yeah, talk about a challenge.
It's like the opposite of big city policing.
Right.
Where you have that anonymity.
He's operating within this web of relationships.
Exactly, where loyalties are deep.
And secrets are...
Closely guarded.
Yeah, so where does he start?
Well, I guess with the most obvious leads.
Right, the people closest to Clara, Sam Greaves, Mason York, Ava Fontaine.
The fortune teller.
Each of them had...
A connection.
A
motive. And a story.
Yeah, and their stories just seem to shift with every telling.
What did you find most revealing about those first interviews?
Well, you know, it's fascinating because each one kind of reflected a different aspect of...
Of the town itself?
Yeah, of the town's psyche.
Okay.
Like Sam...
The fisherman?
Yeah, the heartbroken fisherman. He just embodies that struggle between tradition and change. You know, torn between his love for Clara and his fear of losing his way of life.
Right, and what about his alibi?
Oh, it was shaky.
Was it?
Yeah, riddled with these inconsistencies, gaps in his memory.
Alcohol?
Maybe, or guilt.
Could be both.
Probably a bit of both.
Yeah.
And then there's Mason, the
prodigal son.
Yeah, the outsider returning to a town that...
Doesn't really trust him.
Yeah, doesn't trust him.
He is suspect right from the start.
Yeah, and his anger towards Clara.
Yeah.
Stemming from their past.
Right.
It just painted him as...
As the most likely suspect.
Yeah, the most likely. But was it genuine rage or...
A facade.
Yeah, a carefully constructed facade.
And his alibi.
Non-existent.
Okay, so he's definitely a person of interest.
For sure.
But what about Ava? What was her take on all of this?
Oh, she's something else.
Is she?
She claimed she'd foreseen Clara's death.
Oh.
Even warned her about...
Dark forces.
Yeah, these dark forces at play. But was it genuine intuition or...
Manipulation.
Yeah, was she trying to manipulate the investigation?
She's a tricky one to figure out.
She is, you know, she's got this whole, like...
Mystique.
Yeah.
About her.
But as Officer Leo dug deeper,
he
realized that the truth might lie not in these individual stories.
But in the town itself.
Yeah, the collective whispers of Mistral Bay.
Interesting.
Remember those threatening messages Clara was getting?
Yeah, those were creepy.
Well, it turns out they weren't just isolated incidents.
So it was more than just one person.
Yeah, it was like this network of resistance.
A group.
A group determined to silence her.
Wow, that's chilling.
And protect their way of life.
So Clara's activism had really struck a nerve.
It had. It exposed this dark underbelly of Mistral Bay.
It's like she was a threat to their power.
Exactly. And at the center of this whole network, this name kept coming up.
Oh.
Thomas Dunhill.
Oh, I remember him.
Yeah, wealthy businessman.
Right, the fishing company.
Right. His company thrived on those very practices that Clara was fighting against.
So he had a motive.
Huge motive.
To want her gone.
Yeah, but he was also very good at hiding it.
So he was like a puppet master.
Yeah, pulling strings from the shadows.
Did Officer Leo suspect him right away?
Well, he had this, like, instinct. Yeah, a hunch that Dunhill was involved, but proving it.
That's the hard part.
In a town like Mistral Bay, where loyalty is everything.
It would be almost impossible.
Almost, yeah.
To go against someone like Dunhill.
Especially for a young officer like Leo.
Right, taking on someone with that much power.
Talk about David and Goliath.
It really is.
But as the investigation went on, the pressure mounted.
I bet.
The town was divided.
Some people believed
that it was an accident.
And others thought she was murdered.
Yeah, and the whispers
turned to accusations.
Yeah, and the rumors just escalated.
Into conflict.
Mistral Bay was...
The verge of...
Yeah, tearing itself apart.
That's what happens when secrets start to come out.
Exactly.
Truth can be dangerous.
And Leo knew
that
he needed to act fast.
Find the evidence.
Find the evidence, expose the truth, and bring Clara's killers
to justice.
But he also knew that the closer he got,
the more dangerous it became.
That's right.
So what happened next?
Well, that's where we'll pick up in part 3 of our deep dive.
Okay, can't wait.
Welcome back. It's getting down to the wire in Mistral Bay.
Yeah.
The tensions, well, you can practically cut it with a knife.
I bet.
You know, Officer Leo, he's got Dunhill in his sights.
Okay.
But proving it, Well, that's another story entirely,
It's one thing to suspect, it's a whole other thing to actually prove it.
especially in a town like Mistral Bay.
Right. Where everyone knows each other.
Exactly, and Dunhill
He's a powerful man.
is practically woven into the fabric of that town.
I mean, can you imagine accusing someone like that
I know.
of murder?
It'd be like shaking the whole community to its core
Yeah, people would rather look the other way
than believe someone they trust could be capable of.
something so horrible.
It's like loyalty trumps justice.
Unfortunately, yeah, it happens a lot.
But Leo, he's not the type to back down easily.
No, he seems pretty determined.
He's got that gut feeling about Dunhill.
And sometimes those gut feelings, they lead to something.
They do, and in this case, it led to some pretty damning evidence.
Really? Like what?
Well, remember how Dunhill's fishing company was?
Yeah, the practices that Clara was fighting.
Yeah, those unsustainable practices.
Right, right.
Well, Leo dug into that, found a whole pattern of
Abuse.
blatant disregard for those environmental regulations.
Oh, wow.
Dunhill was basically
Putting profit
profit over people.
ahead of the community.
Exactly. He was harming the very ecosystem that sustained them,
That's got to be hard to stomach.
especially for the people who saw him as a leader.
A pillar of the community.
Right. But suspicion isn't enough to convict.
No, of course not.
So what was the turning point?
What finally linked Dunhill to the murder?
It all goes back to that shadowy figure at the vigil,
Oh, yeah, the one who slipped away.
the one Leo recognized.
Right, right. What about him?
Well, it turns out
Yeah.
this guy had a history
Of what?
doing Dunhill's dirty work.
So he was like an enforcer?
You could say that
Intimidation, threats, violence.
all under the cover of darkness.
And Leo was able to tie him to Dunhill.
Oh, yeah, he found a trail of payments
From Dunhill.
to this enforcer made just days before Clara's death.
Wow. That's pretty damning.
It is. It's like something out of a movie.
But with real-life consequences.
And for Mistral Bay, a town steeped in tradition and secrets, this revelation,
Had to be huge.
it was a game changer.
It was.
The whispers turned to accusations.
Yeah.
Doubts became certainty.
People had to face the truth.
And the truth was that the man they trusted
Was a criminal.
was a criminal. So what happened when they confronted Dunhill?
What did he do?
Well, at first he tried to deny everything,
Yep.
called it a conspiracy,
To discredit him.
ruin his business. But the evidence,
Yeah.
the money trail, it was just too strong.
So he was arrested?
He was. The trial was a media circus.
I bet.
Reporters from everywhere.
Descended on this small town.
Mistral Bay was suddenly in the spotlight.
Must have been surreal for them.
It was. And imagine how Clara's family felt,
I know, reliving everything.
but also seeing justice being served.
That has to count for something.
It does. And during the trial,
Uh-huh.
the prosecution presented a very compelling case. They laid out his motives,
His connections to the enforcer.
his attempts to cover his tracks.
And did anyone testify?
Oh, yeah, witness after witness.
Sharing their stories.
Their stories of intimidation, their fears, their realization that the man they knew was capable
Of murder.
of murder. What about Dunhill? How did he react?
Did he try to maintain his innocence?
He did at first, but without that charm, that facade of respectability, he just seemed
Pathetic.
pathetic. His denials were hollow. His attempts to shift blame,
He didn't work?
they didn't work at all. The jury deliberated for days,
Yeah.
came back with a unanimous verdict,
Guilty.
guilty.
Wow, so justice was served?
It was, but what about Mistral Bay?
Yeah, how do you come back from something like that?
It's tough. Clara's death and the trial forced them to confront some hard truths
About themselves.
about their community.
Their values.
Trust was broken.
Friendships shattered.
It was a dark time.
But sometimes those dark times,
Yeah,
they lead to something better.
they can. And in this case, it sparked a conversation
About change.
about change, about the future of Mistral Bay.
It's like Clara's legacy.
It is her death, while tragic,
It led to a reckoning.
a reckoning with the past,
And a chance to build a better future.
a future that honors her memory.
That's a powerful thought.
It is. And, this whole case is a reminder that darkness can lurk anywhere,
Even in the most beautiful places.
even in the most beautiful places, and the pursuit of justice.
It's not always easy,
It's not. It
Yeah.
can be a long and difficult road.
but it's worth fighting for.
It is. So thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Into the heart of Mistral Bay.
It's been a journey, and we hope Clara's story stays with you.
A reminder that courage and compassion.
They can prevail even in the face of adversity.
Thanks for having me.
It's been a pleasure.